I was going to talk about how to handle sales objections. And then I just felt very inspired, partly from some personal experiences that happened this weekend, to shift. And so I just want to welcome Laura. Good morning. Sherry, good morning. How are you ladies today? It's so good to see you. So, like I said, Monday is technically about sales process, but I felt so strongly that this was the message that this community needed to hear because it was just so present for me this weekend, all about how to overcome self-doubt. And so I just want to ask, for those of you who are here live, is this coming up for you right now? Like, is this something, or maybe it's not right now. Like, maybe you're in a place where you feel totally like you can conquer the world, like nothing's going to stop you. Rita, good afternoon. So good to see you. But if it is, I want to know because it came up big for me this weekend. And I really trust that when we're going for the up level, whatever it is that needs to be healed will be exposed and shown to us. And so I just wanted to share some of my own experience and just a really quick process I used to help clear the self-doubt and to help step back into my power. So we've got Nancy. Good morning. So good to see you. And let me know too, like, please, as always, I want this to be interactive. I want to speak to you directly. So are self-doubts coming up for you right now with what you're doing? Are there specific self-doubts? Like, who am I to make this amount of money, to launch this program, to live this life? Like, let me know in the comments what's coming up for you right now, because I truly trust that this was the download today for a reason. So I'll share a little bit of context, and then, like I said, I want to be here for live coaching for anyone who has questions about this. So this weekend I went back home and I took my son Jack. It was my first solo road trip as a mom with Jack, and so he's a little over a year now, and I've always had Jason there to help when we've been traveling. And it was my first solo trip, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was like a 7-hour drive. I thought, is this gonna last time we did it, he screamed the whole time. And I thought, am I out of my mind? Like, is this going to be torturous? But it was actually really easy and great. But my dad and my stepmom hadn't held him since we had him. And so I wanted to, bring him there so they could see him and hold him and all of that. And it's so interesting. Like, I believe we choose our parents. And I believe that we choose the perfect environment to help us learn the lessons that we need to learn to be able to become the type of people we want to become in this life. And being home, I don't know about for any of you, but for me, it can be easy to be reminded of old ways of thinking. Who can relate to that? Like, can anybody relate to that if you go home and you visit, where it's like all of a sudden you can relate to your former old ways of thinking, whether of lack, of limitation, of scarcity. And so that hit me pretty hard on Saturday. It was so interesting. It was like a very big contrast from where I had been on Friday traveling up there. Let me just check comments. Oh, Leah on LinkedIn. So the self-doubt for you, fear of being visible and creating the life I've always dreamed of. Thank you so much for sharing that. I totally get it. And the process that I'm going to teach this morning, I think will help you with that too. Sierra on Instagram, good morning. Rita, you're saying you can relate to that. Yeah. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, where did this all come from? And I could feel my energy shifting over the course of Saturday. I was there like Friday night through yesterday morning. And we're, as a family, as a company, personally, I'm doing things that I never would have done even a year ago. Like, there's some new things brewing that are so exciting. I think I can share with you about one of them tomorrow. But it's like a huge up level and a big investment. Well, for me, it feels big, a big investment. And I could feel myself being like, oh my gosh, like, who are you, Elise, to like you came from here and you think you're going to do that? Like, I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but that was so present for me over the weekend. And like, I knew not to bring stuff up that I was working on or that I was doing with certain people because it just would not, it would have just magnified self-doubt tremendously. So you learn to like keep certain things to yourself and only share things with people who are kind of in the same thought process. But still, like in my own head, I could feel that old voice, that old like little Elise being like, oh my gosh, who are you to do this? And so I know enough now to know that when that's happening, and if that's happening for you right now in any sense, the first step is to try to step away from it as much as you can. Like when you find yourself in a lower level way of thinking, when you find yourself in self-doubt because you are going through the up level, like that's when it crops up, right? It's probably not the time to try to push it. It's probably not the time to try to like really work through it, right? Because your frame of mind, that low level thinking, you're only going to make it worse if you really pour a lot of energy and attention into it. So I knew enough that it was like in the thick of it on Saturday to step away and to just not even think about it. So that would be like the first piece of advice I would encourage you is like, if you're finding yourself in that doubt, it's probably not the time to try to make it better. But what I did is, and the timing was kind of tricky because I was, taking care of Jack. I was in my dad's basement all this weekend. And I was with Jack on my own, like at night. And so like I knew I had to kind of work with his sleep schedule because I didn't want to wake him up before he was ready. But I just asked on Saturday night as we were going to bed, I was like, all right, like subconscious, I need you to wake me up at 4 a.m. I can't set an alarm for this. I don't want to wake him up, but I need you to wake me up because I know I'll be more fresh and more ready to like get new perspective on these things in the morning. And so sure enough, woke up on my own at 4 a.m. yesterday and had the time to like journal about it and think about it. And I took myself through this process that I want to share with you today. So again, if you're going through any sort of self-doubt about what you're going for, about who are you to build this brand, to have this life, to have this business, to live in this place, like whatever, you can use this as a really simple 3-step process that I took myself through yesterday morning that was so helpful. And so the first thing is when we feel doubt and fear, a lot of times it can feel like this vague, general, like just looming foreboding type of thing, right? And so we want to get really specific about like, what is the thought I'm having right now? Like, what is that specific thought I'm having right now? So we can actually tackle it. Because otherwise, if you just let it remain some big looming thing, like your body, your brain is just going to stay in fight or flight. You're not actually going to be able to deal with it. So write out, number one, like write out specifically what the doubtful thought is. And I found for myself, they were in 2 different areas. So one was in financially, some things that I'm investing in. Like I said, one of the things I think I'll be able to share tomorrow, which I'm super excited about, but much bigger investments than my parents would have ever said was reasonable or responsible, right? And like, especially being in that home environment, I could feel like it was a very interesting contrast. So I wrote that out. And then the other that was showing up for me was in relationships around self-worth, which was actually interesting because that was something that I've done a lot of healing work in, and I was feeling like I was pretty good in. And then I had noticed some experiences popping up over last week where I wasn't feeling worthy of a certain amount of support, love, etc., and that was actually like shooting me in the foot. And so I wrote out the specific thoughts that were showing up in those areas. So one was around financial, the other one was around relationships and self-worth. And they really kind of both boil down to like worthiness, right? What am I worthy of? So that would be the first step, is write out the thoughts. Let me just check the comments here. Laura's saying, I noticed some fear or self-doubt of asking for what I want. I had to self-talk and say, it's okay to ask for what I want. Beautiful. I got to, not had to. Good correction there too. Good correction there too. Yeah. And Laura, I love that. And that would be a beautiful new affirmation for you too. And since you're in the 10K, I don't think you were on our call last week, but we're doing a special training tomorrow where I'm going to teach you how to build in affirmations into a really powerful like mantra you can use again and again. So I hope you can join for that, because that would be a great affirmation to say. And so the second piece, oh, and Mary, good morning, by the way. The second piece is you've got to examine, like, is it really true? Is it true, the thing that I'm feeling doubtful about? And so for me, one of the things I looked at with the financial piece and the investments was like this thing that's not related to work or business for me, but um, a place that I think we're going to be moving to very soon. It was like three times the like just three times our mortgage right now. And I remember looking at it and being like, it was felt so, it was like, yes, everything was clicking into place with this very easily over the past few weeks. And then when I was there in my old home environment this weekend, it was like, oh my gosh, like, who are you, at least, to like live in a place like this? It was so interesting. And so I had to reframe it and say, well, is it true that this is actually a lot of money? And that's where you can pull out universal laws. And it was like, oh my gosh, what is the law? Why am I blanking on this one right now? Anyway, it's about perspective. It's like nothing is big or small unless you think it is. And so like in context of how I grew up, yes, it's a lot. But in the context of how quite a few people live, no, it's not. And so I had to do that perspective and say, for the version of me that's like who I'm committed to becoming, this is her normal. This is her like, and I had to like reframe and actually feel in my body like, no, this is normal for you. You got to get used to this as your new monthly investment for the type of life that you're creating for your family and for where you want to be and for your home and your physical environment. And so it was this like, okay, you got to reframe it, right? And oftentimes like I talk with my clients about this a lot. I coach myself through this a lot, but it's all perspective. So for old Elise, for little Elise, it felt like a lot. For where I'm going and what I'm committed to, it's actually not. And for a lot of people who are living the life that I'm committed to living, it's not a lot either. It's actually a very normal monthly amount. And so that was like such a reframe. So you've got to look at, is this true? And maybe it's true. Maybe the doubtful thought is true for the old you, but I can tell you right now, it's never true. Like when you decide to step up your and you feel any amount, like we talked about last week, right? Those lower vibrational feelings, fear, doubt, scarcity, etc. The reason you feel those feelings is that that's not true for you. You're thinking a thought that's not true. And your inner guidance system, you can call it your soul, you can call it God, you can call it your higher self, whatever. The reason you feel bad in that moment is because you're thinking a thought that's not in alignment with what's true. And your higher self, your inner being, is not willing to think that thought. So they're not willing to join you in that lower vibrational feeling, which is why you feel bad, because you're cut off and you're disconnected from source, from what's true for you. That's the source of the bad emotion. Does that make sense for all of you? Like, let me know, because this is, to me, is such a powerful reminder when we go into those lower vibrational states. Let me just check comments. Sierra saying this conversation is so needed for me today. Girl, I tell you what, I just always trust that like the things that I teach what I need to hear too, right? So I'm glad that it's needed for you today, and I'm glad it's speaking to you. Jen on YouTube, glad I caught a little of your live. I'm so glad you're here. So good to see you this morning. And then Sierra, welcome, good morning. And so you got to look at, is it true? So the hint is it's never true. Again, it may have been true for you in the past, but if we don't take, so the third step is it's not, and you got to write out the opposite or write out what is true for you. Because if you don't take the time to get really specific on what's that doubtful thought I was just having, and then what's the opposite of it, again, you're going to be ruled by some vague, nebulous feeling of doubt, and that gets stored in your body over time through trauma, through things that didn't work out well for you in the past, but it'll literally hold you back from going for what you want. So we got to get really specific and get the thought out of your head, out of your body, onto the paper, so you can look at it with an objective lens. And then when you do the reframe, you can also look at it through the eyes of like, well, how would so-and-so look at this? And that's how I think a lot too. I'll look at like, who are my mentors? Who are the people who I aspire to live like, who I aspire to be like? And I think, well, what would they think about this? Like, would so-and-so think that this was a lot of money to spend every month on where we live? Or would so-and-so think this was a lot of money to invest in coaching? And then you've got to reframe it and get that and get that different perspective on it. And then I literally journaled to myself, and it was like, I've got it right here where I did the journaling yesterday. It's a lot of like pages and pages of this, but it was like, no, here's what's true. And just writing out like, this is what's actually true. And it's all the opposite of what I was thinking, but you'll notice that you're on to the truth, because you'll start to feel relief, and you'll start to feel like, yes, right? Like that feeling of, okay, I'm back in alignment now. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have those doubtful thoughts creep in again. And I don't know that we ever fully release self-doubt. Like, as long as you're stretching and growing, you're probably always going to have, like, when you're ready for your next level, there will be thoughts that crop up around why you're not worthy, why you can't have it, why it's not possible for you. Otherwise, you would have already had it if you didn't have belief systems that told you it wasn't possible for you. So it's going to happen, but we just have to have the tools to use. Thank you for the hearts. We just have to have the tools to use to reframe it. And then you've got to like anchor in, like, all day yesterday. So we were driving home yesterday for like 7 hours, and it was just positive, 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 positive. Like, I listened to my life script while we drove. I listened to my affirmations. I listened to Abraham Hicks. I listened to my mentor's podcast, and I was like, again and again and again and again, like anchoring in that positivity. And so you just have to know, like, when you came here, you didn't have self-doubt. You were not born with self-doubt. It's things that you learned over time. It was conditioning. It was very well-meaning, well-intentioned people who had learned over time that they couldn't have what they wanted and that there's lack and limitation, who taught you that. And so we have to learn to see it for what it is, which is just falsehoods. It's not real, but if you let them rule your life, then you're going to live a life of lack and limitation. And that's not why you're here. That's not why you came here. Okay. So do we have questions on any of this? That's really what I have for you today. And I know it's a little shorter today. If you have questions on, or if you have any specific doubts that are showing up for you, like Leah saying, fear of being visible and creating the life I've always dreamed of. And it's interesting too, I think our doubts will often show up in the area that's actually most meant for us. So, Leah, having worked with you, and hopefully you don't mind me just doing some live coaching right now, like having the opportunity to know you were so meant to be visible, right? Like that's your gift, like speaking, teaching, being seen. But we're conditioned, and we have things that happen to us in our life, in our childhood, that make us scared of the very thing that's most meant for us, or make us think we can't have it. And so often the areas where you have the most self-doubt are the areas that, if you could just accept that it was for you, and if you could just accept that, it's like, I love the, what is the book by Joseph Campbell? I forget, but the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Like the thing that you're scared of, the thing you're scared of doing, the thing you're afraid of, whether it's being visible, whether it's investing a certain amount, asking for something, like that's where the treasure is for you. And so you just gotta do it. Like, you just gotta do it. And sometimes it's almost like, here I go, like jumping in, right? Holding your breath and jumping in, knowing that nothing is final. Nothing is, like, you can't get it wrong. There's opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. There's money after money after money. There's client after client after client. You're never done. Thank you for the hearts. Oh, and Gail, good morning. You're like, I love how Abraham Hicks says, like, you'll never get it all done, and you can't get it wrong. Like, it's just now in this moment. How can I step into this most empowered, most, for you, Leigh, and for so many people who are like visible, powerful version of myself. And it's the thing you're scared to do that you must do, because it's that fear that's actually going to keep you where you are. And that's not what you came here for. All right. So, all right, my loves, are we good? Are we complete? Do we have questions? I'm going to assume we're good today. Just a friendly reminder, like if you enjoy these lives, I would love if you shared it with a friend. Share it with somebody like you who, my brand is like women who are either entrepreneurs or in sales who are going for 6 or 7 figures. But this is for everyone, like everyone who wants to step up. Thank you so much for the hearts. Everyone who wants more, everyone who wants to overcome self-doubt. So all are welcome here. And I would be honored if you wanted to share this with someone you thought could benefit from it. Jen, afraid to be seen is hitting home. And I never knew that. That's why I'm still here. Yeah. And isn't that, I love how it's powerful when we can witness ourselves in others and just hear like, what are the things? And it's funny because there's people you look up to and you don't think they have self-doubts. Instacart is here. You don't think they have self-doubts, but they do. And there's people like everyone in here can relate, right? Everyone in this community, even though we're all just, live right now on social media, like you are mirrored in everyone who's here. And so I just want to say thank you for being willing to share yourself. Thank you for being willing to share the doubts that come up for you, because other people can see themselves reflected and grow through that too. And just know, like, it comes up for me. Like, that's why I wanted to share this today, because this weekend it was like, wow, this is stuff that like I really thought a lot of it was healed, and it is healed because it comes up when you're hitting another level, and that's what I'm doing right now. But it's just interesting how these things show up. So I hope this was helpful to you. Use that process. So again, just to recap real quick, use that 3-step process. Number 1, write out specifically what the doubtful thought is. Number 2, examine, is it really true? And number 3, what's the opposite? And that becomes your new affirmation. That becomes your new mantra. That becomes your new visualization. And that's what's true for you. You know it's true because your body feels better when you say it. And that's how you know. So, all right, my loves. Well, thank you so much, everyone who's here. Tomorrow I'm excited because we're going to talk about how to build your personal brand. But it's going to be through the She Sells lens. And I've got an amazing guest coming for you on the podcast tomorrow, who's like a real personal branding expert. And we do a deep dive in the podcast into that. But it really is one of the biggest things that will help with your sales, with your clients. And for any of you who have fear of visibility around that, because that is a big part that can hold you back, we'll dig into that tomorrow too. Okay. Nada, right? You're so welcome. I'm so glad that you're here and that you popped on. I love you all. Thank you. Share this with a friend if it's resonating, and have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.